Hey, I'm Noah Dabney. I'm 17 years old, and this is my story. About a year ago, in January of 2016, my dad passed away because of cancer. And so I went through, the whole motions of depression and feeling upset about things and just not being happy in general. And so that went on for a couple of months. But I got to a point where I came to the realization that I had two options. I could either continue going on this way and just continue being depressed all the time and not happy with how my life was, or I could actively start making a change in as many areas of my life as I possibly could and try to better myself in every way possible. So from that point on, I started taking fitness more seriously. I started taking guitar more seriously, any relationships I had more seriously, just trying to better my life in every way that I could. So at that time, I had a couple things put in place. I had been doing the CrossFit thing for a while, and I had been doing rock climbing for a while and things at home on my own for a little while. But from that point on, I decided that instead of these things being a hobby of mine, that it was going to turn into a lifestyle, and that it was something I was going to really start taking seriously. So in terms of CrossFit, I started upping the intensity and upping the output that I was putting into the workouts, because the amount that I put in is the amount that I got out. And so if I went harder on running, I would get more out of it afterwards. In terms of rock climbing, I started scaling up the difficulty of the routes that I was doing climbing. I started making that harder. And then in terms of stuff that I was doing on my own, I would, at home I'd do some push-ups every now and then, or pull-ups with pull-up bar in my house, sit-ups, all those sorts of things. I would do it with more intensity and more regularity on the days when I wasn't doing rock climbing or CrossFit. And then in terms of something like guitar outside of working out, I decided that instead of practicing 1 hour a day, now I'm at a point where I'm practicing 2 to 4 hours a day, because it's something that I really care about and I really want to get as good as I possibly can. So before I started all this, I had a terrible diet. I had 2 times the amount of calories I was supposed to have in a day. All my calories were coming from carbohydrates or sugar or unhealthy fats. And so through a mixture of research, talking to people who are smarter than I am, and just figuring out or going through a lot of different options, I found that the ketogenic diet at first worked well for me, which was just eating protein, vegetables, a little bit of fruit here and there, drinking a lot of water. That worked for me for a little while, but then I just wasn't able to maintain that very well. So then after talking to some people, I went to the whole, prepping my meals, chicken, rice, broccoli, every meal, 3 days a week, or 3 meals a day, in and out, 7 days a week. And that lasted not very long at all, because I found that there's only so much that you can do with chicken, rice, and broccoli. And so then taking the stuff from these diets that did work for me, I learned from that and sort of adapted it to what I'm at now, where I'm doing sort of a ketogenic thing, where I'm doing very low carbohydrates, high fat, high protein, lots of fruits and vegetables and water. And also I do a thing called intermittent fasting, where I eat between noon and 8 p.m. and that's where I eat all my calories throughout the day. And then I don't eat during the other times. So just a variety of different things, finally learning and narrowing it down to what works best for me. So before when I was eating food, it was for me to enjoy it and for me to be happy with what I was eating. So that normally led to me eating things like a bunch of carbs or a bunch of sugar or sugary drinks, all those sorts of things. But I realized that food is not meant for you to necessarily enjoy all the time. It's meant to fuel your body. And so once I had that mindset, eating is still something that I look forward to doing, but it's also something that is beneficial for me rather than being hurtful to whatever else I'm doing. Yeah. So at the beginning, of course, I did have long-term goals of what I wanted to get down to, a set weight that I wanted to get, things of that sort. But I found that expecting me to have that as my only goal was unrealistic, and if I have that, I was bound for failure at the beginning. So instead of doing that, I decided to set myself smaller goals. So for example, the first goal that I set was being able to do a pull-up. And so I worked hard at that, and then eventually I got to a point where I could do that. After that, then I got to a point where I wanted to be able to run a mile, which is something that I couldn't remember the last time I was able to do. And so I kept working on that, building any cardiovascular endurance I needed, and then I got to a point where I could run a mile. At one point, I got to a point where I wanted to be able to last longer against one of my friends arm wrestling, And so I kept working on that, and so now instead of getting out after 5 seconds, I get out after 15 seconds or 20 seconds if I'm really lucky. So setting small, much more achievable goals for myself really helped me to keep motivated and keep going, rather than just while having this long-term goal of getting down to a certain weight, but also having these small things that I can celebrate and be happy about, knowing that I'm making progress no matter what. So as far as weight goes, the highest weight that I've ever been at, which is something that I plan on never going back to, was 285, and that was what I was in February of last year. But now, right now, I'm around 213 at the time when I weigh myself, and I'm gonna keep on going. If I could, get down below 200, that'll be the first time that I've been below that in like 5 years, and I'll probably break down and start crying right there and then. As far as body fat percentage, just recently I got to a point where no longer I was considered to be at an unhealthy body fat percentage, and instead I'm at the upper end of the healthy range, but still in that healthy range. BMI, I'm very close to no longer being considered obese by whatever standards that are out there. So all these things are things that I can't remember the last time, or if I was ever at that point, and it'll be a huge thing for me. So I think that's something that's very important to have at the beginning, is an internal drive to want to make that change. If you don't have that, you're bound for failure, because if you can't get yourself to do something, nobody else is going to be able to make you do something. So you need to want to make that change. Now that doesn't mean that you can't have external people there to help motivate you. I've had Carol as a huge help for me. My family is a huge support for me. All my friends is a huge support for me. All these different people who are there to support me while I still have that internal drive, which has kept me going. And I think that another thing that's very important is really loving what you're doing. It sounds sort of cliche, but I'm very fortunate that I found both CrossFit and rock climbing, which are two exercise routines that I absolutely love doing and are something that I look forward to doing every week. Every day before I come into CrossFit, I tell my mom I'm looking forward to going into CrossFit today. So I think that finding something that you really have that drive for and the motivation to keep doing is vital in the long-term success, specifically deadlifts. And I think the community here is great. I mean, I heard people say it all the time, and I sort of sensed it when I was in the kids program, but since I've gone to the adult classes, there's been like absolutely no times when I haven't felt welcome or a part of the group, and I think that's great.